Hi, everybody. Pleased to introduce our panel today. So let me introduce Audrey Golding. She is a immigration attorney and partner with Fragamon Worldwide. It's the largest and leading immigration services firm. She's a licensed attorney in both the U.S. and Canada and has particular expertise in North America cross-border immigration matters. Thank you for joining me today. Tina Greenbaum is a high performance coach, psychotherapist, and the CEO of Mastery Under Pressure, a management coaching program for high performing executives and teams who needs to make clear decisions on high stake environments and refine and master their leadership skills. Mag Barone is a Silicon Valley based software engineer and founder of Pangean. It's an AI powered remote talent platform. She's a member of the World Economic Forum and an author in Forbes. Elvis Wu is the Chief Investment Officer at Intelligio Pro Group, where he focuses on incubating and investing in early stage AI projects. His deep understanding of AI and its impact on business operations makes him a self-taught after speaker on topics of technology and talent acquisition. Welcome, everybody. So happy to have you here. So I would love to start with Mag. Talk to me about the key trends shaping the future of work and how should companies prepare for them?
So there are a couple of key trends that we should pay attention to. They're driven by number one, technology, number two, demographic changes, and number three, social changes in our environment. So I think the first one, the biggest one, is remote work. That's exactly what we are doing at Pangean. We've been pretty much working remotely for the last 10 years at least. It was not as publicized, but COVID really accelerated the pace of remote work. And now it's estimated that by 2025, over 70% people will be working remotely. Maybe not full time, maybe it's going to be hybrid. There's going to be quite a bit of remote work. So that's over 2 billion people in the world.
Wow.
So every single study that you look at, it's coming from Gartner, from Owl Labs, really shows that top professionals in the work want that flexibility. Over 70% says they want to work remotely. Over 50% say they would quit their job if employer would not allow them flexibility to work remotely. So it's really, really great incentives for companies to really kind of create an environment where that professional have that flexibility that can work from anywhere. The second trend, of course, AI. World Economic Forum found out really study by 2025 we're gonna lose over 80 million jobs due to automations and AI, but they're gonna be replaced by over 90 million jobs, so net or a little bit over 12 million with brand new skill sets. So there's an opportunity to our workforce right now to keep reskilling, and it's estimated that 50% of our workforce will have to reskill within the next 2 years. So that's great opportunity, great challenge, but also opportunity for the companies. And then the third one is definitely the diversity, right? Study after study shows that when you increase diversity of thought and gender and ethnic background, your productivity increases in every single company. So we have incredible opportunity to tap into those top three trends to really create top-notch workforce for any company.
Fantastic answer. That leads me to Ms. Tina. Hold on one second. My iPhone is not participating in this chat. What qualities do today's employees look for in a company leader they want to work for?
So following up on what Mag just said, I have a list of 7 different variables that if this company actually follows these variables, it's very likely that people will want to stay and want to work with them. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. One is clear goals. Do I know what I'm supposed to do? Is it very, very clear? Is there a lot of clarity on what I'm supposed to do? Continuous feedback. Did you ever work someplace where nobody ever talked to you and nobody ever gave you any feedback? So that's critically important, that we want to know that we're seen, that we're heard, that what we're doing is important. Social interaction, and coming back to, again, remote work, that brings up that other quality. How are we going to create those cultures where people feel like a part of what's happening? Balance challenge, and this is really important. Many times if you're left by yourself, sometimes you feel bored, that there's not enough work. Sometimes it's too much work. So there's a part in there, it's actually, this comes from the studies of flow, how to stay in the flow, that it's just challenging enough that I feel like I'm learning, I'm on that edge. But if it's too challenging, I'm going to be overstressed and then I'm going to want to quit. A sense of improvement, again, that goes back to that continuous feedback. I feel like I'm improving, that somebody's recognizing that I'm improving. risk attitude, meaning that I can speak to my employer or my manager without the risk of being fearful that I'm going to be fired. And lastly, a sense of control. We all like to be autonomous. We like to have some sense that we are in charge and that there are people who are honoring that as well.
Beautiful answer. Now, one thing that really stuck with me, Meg, is your discussion about diversity, which leads me to you, Audra, because you taught me something, which was since 2000, more than half of American startups compromised value at 1 billion or more have been co-founded by immigrants. I was curious, how has the U.S. fared with retaining international students in the STEM field, and what challenges have you seen in that area?
Sure, happy to contribute to the discussion because it is about the changing workplace, right, of American, as this conference has been focused on today. Technology, right, is going to be the, and has been the leader in terms of the market, the employment market. And so whether you're working directly in a technology space or technology product, or in another area within a business, then the technology is driving what's happening in that business. And of course, all of that relies on STEM talent. We recognize that the jobs of the future are going to be focused on STEM, but yet we have a very hard time retaining STEM talent in the United States. We're losing the race to countries like Canada, the UK, Australia. Why? Because our immigration system really has not kept up with making changes that will allow people to be recruited into or market very easily, or be able to retain employers to be able to retain those people. Many of the folks that are, the unicorns of those companies that you talked about a short while ago, really made it through a very cumbersome, a very intricate, a very complex system, and it hasn't gotten any easier. I'm sure none of you equate the word immigration with simplicity and ease in the United States. So although we tend to still attract a lot of international students into our STEM programs, and we have the highest numbers of individuals who are studying in STEM fields at the advanced degree stage, we're not creating enough opportunities for them to navigate an immigration system that will allow them to stay. And so we lose that talent after a lot of the extensive education and development has gone on here in the United States. So happy to talk about it a little bit more as we have time, but that is one of the areas. Immigration is one of the key areas that is going to allow us to be at the forefront of retaining talent for a future job.
Yeah, I mean, as a recruiter for the last 8 years, most of my clients are looking for those that don't require visas, right? So it's very important that we're promoting that. Now, Elvis, I'd love to understand some of the trends you foresee in the future job market.
Okay, so for the past year, we have talked with over 100 companies to see how they were hiring. And also we host almost 100 events for their job searching events and try to do the match for them. And we found a big mismatch for this company and the people who want to looking for jobs. So before I continue, I just want to ask a question. How many people here is looking for a job? Or maybe, okay. Okay. So how many founders here, if you are the CEO? Or okay. So like for this event is half. It's good. And what do we see for the big change in company hiring is like three things. So one thing is most of the company, they are trying, not only for the big company, but also for the small company, they are trying to implement AI. So in which means it's like carbon-based and silicon-based. It's like human and AI. They are trying to collaborate together. So this is the one thing we can see. And the result for this trend is like the company, they are trying to hire less real people, but more AI people. So this is the first trend. The second trend is like, as what our guests say, is like more remote work. So everyone is trying to leverage their human resources in different countries, especially in Asia, in Poland, they have the cheap engineers, and also like they also outsource a lot of the works to other countries. So what we can see, another big change is like, this is the information I get from an MIT professor. He was in my conference and said, so the AGI is just a beginning. So in the future is like, you should imagine the future, what will like if the the AI can do everything for you. What's the relationship between you and the AI? So he gave us a suggestion is like, for now, if you, no matter you are the founder or you are the people who are looking for job, you are trying to be the master for AI at this moment, because otherwise the AI will be your master in the future. So this is what we see, and also another idea we would like to share is in the future every person will get multiple jobs. So for you, maybe you have multiple roles. You are the founder for this company, but also you are the UI UX for another company. Because of the AI, you get the ability to do, I think, multiple jobs. Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about remote. I'm curious, Mag, what are the implications of remote and hybrid work models on employee productivity and company culture? I know for our company, we're 100% remote. I will never be going back into an office myself. And, we have some challenges sometimes with remote work and performance. What's your take?
So I personally have been remote for over 10 years before I started Pangean, and Pangean has now over 300,000 job seekers and professionals from around the world working remotely from 200 countries and territories. So this is a global trend. But for us, remote work is an opportunity, right? So number one, studies do show that flexibility to work from anywhere and deploy your talent from anywhere, and having that professional working in the environment that they decided on, their quiet space at home, when there's no disruptions, where they can create the comfort that they really want. They can skip the traffic on average for 40 minutes to an hour and use that time to either have a quiet time to prepare for work or do some yoga and some extra time for relaxation, can add drastically to productivity. But at the same time, we also know there's a risk with that being at home and in the same space where your actual life is, we have tendency to sit longer. So I think that's an opportunity for any company, an opportunity for a professional for incredible career that we could not have had otherwise. But at the same time, really watching out for those steps and having companies and employees working together to set specific limits on time worked, on time off, on disconnecting from Slacks and all those professional tools. So that's number one. Number two, that engagement and communication, right? Again, there's a tremendous benefit to take from online communication because we can be real time. If we were here in this facility, for me to talk to someone that is on the other side of the room, I have to take a walk, maybe 10 minutes, stop by, maybe I'll find that person, maybe they're there, maybe they're not, maybe I talk to them, maybe I don't, right? So it can really slow down collaboration. But at the same time, with remote work, while we can have speed of communication that is instant, right? Going on Slack on the instant messaging, there is a risk that we are not connecting as humans anymore, that there is disconnection. And the Gallup study shows that employees that are connected to each other within the company and the company culture are more likely to perform better, 3 times better, if they have that connection. So again, opportunity for the companies really creating systems within those remote work ecosystems where we connect to each other as humans, and people often forget. So really setting up times that when we're jumping on Zoom, we're not talking only about work, but talking, how was your weekend? Show me where you are remotely from your location. How's the food? What kind of weather you have? What did you do? Fun stuff. So for us, what we are cultivating is really social channel at work, where people can share their videos and pictures from wherever they are, and really kind of cultivating that human connection. So we know who we are as people, and more likely that's going to create higher productivity, but also higher job satisfaction for everyone.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You said there's going to be 2 million jobs created because of AI, or 2 million remote jobs?
Over 12 million.
12 million. Okay, I was off by a little bit there, just a little. So my question for you, Audra, and I know we didn't talk about this yet, but with all of the remote work globally, has that affected your practice at all?
None whatsoever. If I can put it into context, on the global side, there are a lot of countries that had implemented digital nomad visas, so that people could work remotely regardless of where you originated. And a lot of people chose to work in some very sunny locations during that period of time. I think a lot of that has continued. with the call back to work by a lot of even our leading technology companies, people are realizing that there is a need to bring people back into the United States. Having said that, a lot of STEM talent, again, just from their the international backgrounds of STEM, the STEM talent pool, everybody really wants to be in the heart of where things are happening, i.e. Silicon Valley, i.e. California, i.e. Pittsburgh, where the hubs are that are doing autonomous driving. And, people do have a desire still to be collaborative, particularly in the engineering space and the chemical spaces. You have to have some amount of collaboration. And so we're finding that there is no decreased demand for people who need those work visas to come into the U.S. to do the work as a result of also having an option to be hybrid or remote, because the work still has to be done in a collaborative way with folks where the latest innovations are happening.
Interesting. Tina, this leads me to understanding some of the elements that lead to employee satisfaction. What encourages them to stay for the long run?
So we talked a little bit about what the employer can do
Yep.
and create that environment, whether it's remotely or not. But it's also, I'm a boomer, but I love the younger generation and I love the values. And what they're looking for is not the old fogey that was behind the gate, where with a lot of gatekeepers in front of them. They want their senior leadership to be authentic, to be real, to be friendly, to care about them. And so it's not necessarily the easiest thing for a leader to do, because I have a saying that I have a program called Mastery Under Pressure, and the pressure of a leader obviously is great in many, many levels. But I always say a leader has about as much room as a crease on a pair of pants, meaning every group wants the leader, and that every group wants to kill the leader off. So you have to walk that fine line that I'm friendly, I care about you, I care about your family, but it's not so democratic that I'm a pushover. And at the same time, if I'm too strong, I'm too autocratic. And nobody wants to work for anybody who's an autocratic, because that autonomy thing is real. So it's, again, keeping people, it comes from the top. Everything comes from the top. If the top leadership does not have the values that their workers have, then people will leave. It's really kind of that simple. So I really love working with that executive team, that high level, so that if you know yourself really well and you know your trigger points and you get short-tempered and you get all those things that create that kind of environment where people don't want to be, you got to watch it at the gate.
Tina, is there a difference between a leader and a boss?
I think it goes back to that autocratic kind of thing. When we think about a boss, we think about somebody being bossy, right? And nobody likes to be bossed around. And as we know, I don't know what the statistics, maybe you're really good with statistics, Mag, but how quickly people are looking for the new job when they get the job. How quickly is that resume kind of being pushed over? Am I going to be here for 6 months? Am I going to be here for 3 months? Am I going to be here for a year? And so that motor is always running. And the boss, the leadership team, is under great scrutiny. And so I think it behooves the leaders to do their own, as I say, their own personal work, so that they know what they're projecting. And then, as I said, that environment, that culture will come all the way down. And I always say, wouldn't you want to be that leader where everybody says, I love working for you. I love working for your company. That's kind of the environment that we want to create, whether it's remotely or not.
An excellent answer. I would love to be complimented like that. I would love that. So curious, Audra, we talked about, STEM talent coming into the US, but how do we keep them here? How do we retain STEM talent?
$1 million question. No, I mean, I will say it's, again, the need is understood, I think, within our current administration about the barriers that have been in place for so long when it comes to immigration generally, but particularly professional work visas. And so over the last few years, you've seen a series of executive orders, a series of policy memoranda that have come out from the Biden administration that has really made a big change in companies' abilities to allow to find solutions for the lack of either work visas or the lengthy processing times for a lot of visas for folks to be able to come into the U.S. but also stay in the U.S. With that necessary skill set. So there have been things like expanding the number of job, professional or study codes that are considered to be STEM visas, so that when students graduate from school, as many students as possible who have studied in the STEM field will get an extended work authorization. It used to be that somebody would graduate, you'd get a 1-year work visa to get some practical experience and go back home. There's now an ability to get this 3-year work visa or practical training work authorization because you have studied in a STEM field. If you are working with a company that's giving you work in that STEM field. There's also been a recognition that a lot of the work that folks are graduating in fields in are really in our national interest. We have folks who are graduating from universities and having really interesting backgrounds in fusion energy, really interesting backgrounds in environmental engineering, and of course all of our computer science fields. So those folks are in a position where not only do they have to, they no longer really have to rely on an employer to sponsor them. There are options to self-sponsor. And so the government has made it possible for the agency, the immigration agency, to look at applications for self-sponsorship in a very different way, so that it is more permissive for officers to say, this person looks like their work could be in the national interest, or this person looks like they could be, in an extraordinary, have an extraordinary background. And that way you're not constantly relying on an employer who may say, I don't want to hire somebody with a work visa in order to be able to self-sponsor and still be able to then have that talent retained here. So the government has done some really interesting things. We'll see how long it lasts. We don't know whether there will be a change in administration because, of course, not a lot of stuff is happening in Congress. So a lot of the activity has been through, like I said, executive orders. And those things tend to change from administration to administration. So our hope is that we get to retain the STEM talent, regardless of whose administration is in office, because it is demonstrably, effective in terms of where we are going. I will say, if you didn't have a foreign student or somebody who was retained here, you wouldn't have had a COVID vaccine from Moderna, for example. And if you can continue to show those linkages, then the government has an imperative to try and retain people.
What an answer. I did not know that you could self-sponsor a visa. That is great information for me to have. Now, Elvis, I want to talk about the competitive job market. The job market is very competitive. So how do you keep your employees happy and away from recruiters like me who are trying to steal all of them? How do you retain them when I have such a fabulous offer?
That's also a $1 million question. So I think for this question, it depends on which stage for your company right now. If you are a startup, if a small company, or if you are a big company, so it's a different answer. For the small company, I talked with some founders. I think that really, the answer only just persuaded me is like find the right person with you. So you don't need to return for the person like who don't share the same value with you. So what you need to do is like if you find the right team members, and what you need to do is to stay with them and build something great and give them I think it should be the meaningful pay or meaningful salary or return. And what I think especially for our topic today, so is our top tech talents. I have researched or like surveyed a lot of the top tech talent from Google, from Meta, from OpenAI, and also from Stanford. So what they value most, except the salary, the most is like they want to do something great. So they are already top talent. So the money is the basic things for them. So they can easily get a fair amount to in the market with any company. So what they do is like if you share the value with them, if you are the great leader, like a leader is not boss. So if you are a good leader with them, they will just stay with you. And I think for the small company, the value is the most important thing for me, because you cannot give them the real big amount of money. And but for the big company is like after we search some HR from Google and or Meta, because we are the global recruiting company, we serve almost 18 countries for over 500 companies. So they told me that it's all about their growth in the market, in their internal system, and also if they can get a fair amount. I think for even just for the big company, so it's like, so I think that if they transfer the job, it's very easy for them. It's hard for if they can. So to be honest, I'm not sure if I can say something.
Go for it. Go for it.
Maybe it's like because of maybe if you want to know more, I can just in person, but not in public. Yeah, I get some like internal information for a lot of complaints about their boss, and yeah. And by the way, I want to share one more information for you guys, because I heard like half of you is founders, half of you are some people who looking for the jobs. So I run so many events last year, but from different countries. So I host the African, Russian, Ukraine, or like Japanese and Asian some events there. I saw a lot of opportunity there, not only for the founders but also for the employees and the people. They are especially in Asian. They are looking for some people who specialize in PM or go to market. They are really eager to hire more and pay more to enter the US market. And also, this is also a good news for the founders. If we want to have more clients from not only in Asian, but all Africa. So if you want to know more people, I can just come to me. I can just introduce some like key person in different communities.
Will you give my phone number to those hiring managers?
Yeah, come to me.
So one of my favorite sayings is you quit a boss, not a job. You guys know what I mean? You know what I mean? So that being said, interview process. When you are interviewing, what are some of the hints or flags that you should be looking for that you're interviewing with a toxic boss? And Tina, based on your background, I'd love to get your feedback.
So which way are we looking? That the employee is interviewing the boss?
Yes, the employee. Well, I mean, when you're interviewing, you're always interviewing the company. They're not just interviewing you. But
Right.
What are some, like, I'm interviewing with a hiring manager. What am I looking for to make sure that they're going to be a good leader for me?
I think kind of what you were saying, both of you were saying, it really is values,
Mhm.
core values. You know, asking somebody, what are you looking for? If you had, you know, what does it look like 5 years, 10 years, and listen very, very carefully to their answers. If they're only after the money, they're going to leave you very, very quickly. If you're doing something and they have a passion for it, they're much more likely. So you let people really kind of talk and get a sense, and also listen to your gut.
Oh yeah.
Again, I kind of laugh a lot of times. I'm kind of a mind body person, and working with a lot of engineers and a lot of techie people, I always say a lot of you are walking heads. You know, you have another part of your body. You have another part of you that gives you lots and lots of information. So everything might look really good, you know, on a piece of paper. And if you walk away afterwards and say, how did I feel in front of that person? Would I really want them to be part of my organization, or would I feel really good putting them on to the next person? So I think the values kind of sticks out for me just off the top of my head as probably one of the most important things. And the other thing is, sometimes people are walking away from a really bad situation, right? And so you want to listen to how they talk about that, whether they badmouth the last person or the last thing, or again, your listening skills. You want somebody that wants to come toward you, toward the offering, toward the job, towards the commitment to what it is, the project, rather than I don't want this and I don't want that and I don't want this. Those are very telling kinds of conversations. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Curious about, I want to touch base on visas and if you've noticed any cultural differences within companies, those that employ people that are on visas and those that don't.
I can't really say that in this market in Silicon Valley, certainly, I would say almost every company is dependent on, and not dependent in the legal sense. We have an immigration term that's called a dependent employer, depending on the number of employees you have that are on visas. But I would say most companies have some amount of foreign workers that are on payroll because they have found the skill and talent of that individual. Even the smallest company that's a startup that's about to, get launched. We've just gotten some seed funding. We're about to launch, but guess what? We know that we're going to need to get one or two people that we already like at Stanford, or that they're coming out of Berkeley, or that we found somewhere in Poland to come in. That we really need as part of this growth plan that we have for the business. It's a part of, it's a necessity, and it comes from the fact that I think it's still something like 70% of our tech talent is coming from US our international students that are graduating from universities. I don't know about you, but when I talk to my friends and relatives, all our kids are still going into like art history and stuff like that. Kids that are coming into the United States, and advanced degree seekers as well. Are still going into STEM fields primarily, and the bottom line is the U.S. is simply not, educating enough folks in STEM fields that will fill the jobs that we have now, and that are going to fill the jobs that we have for the future. So it's companies are almost always dependent on that labor pool, because those are the folks who are pursuing those types of degrees in U.S. universities now. And it's not just the U.S. Again, it's most Western countries. Again, I mentioned Australia. They're doing a lot of things that are very progressive and permissive in terms of getting folks into that market. Canada as well. You may have recalled in the news last year that Canada had granted this just overnight, said we're going to set aside 10,000 visa numbers for people who had an H-1B visa in a tech field in the United States who were running out of time, and the wording of the legislation was something to behold. But they basically just created a visa category to steal 10,000 H-1B visa holders from the United States because they need tech talent. Yeah. So countries are doing what they need to do to get that talent in, and we're still pretty archaic in terms of our visa rules. So I would say that it's the economy, it's the companies that are driving what the policy needs to look like.
Now, we've got a ton of founders in our audience. Do you mind if I ask, what's the average cost to sponsor someone to come to the U.S., whether it's on an H-1B or an EOD? Is there an average cost associated?
Well, I don't think Stephen and I would mention what our fees are for that support, but
I had to ask.
But it's an important thing. It's an investment for sure. And companies are always trying to find ways that we are going to try and retain people when you make that investment, because you do lay out significant costs. In addition to the folks that are helping you do this on a professional basis, there are legal fees involved. But unfortunately, the government just imposed another barrier. On April 1, it introduced a whole set of new fees. So, for example, the baseline fee for an immigration application for most categories for work visas was $460. That went up to something $780 now under the I-1 for the baseline fee. There's also like a $500 anti-fraud fee. They've now imposed what's called a $600 asylum fee, which is just to fund the asylum program for the government. That is being borne by companies. If you want to expedite a case so that the government doesn't sit around for 6 months on your file, you have to pay $2,805 for them to make a decision in 10 to 15 business days. It is not inexpensive. And those are just the government filing fees. And that's for just regular professional visas. It runs the gamut. So it's not inexpensive, and you're looking at, when you're employing a foreign worker, you're looking at a baseline. You're probably somewhere around $5,000 just to get that person's first work visa. Fortunately, as I mentioned, the government, did expand the 1-year work permit after graduation to 3 years for people in the STEM field. Those folks just get their free card. You don't have to do anything for it to get them that EAD card. But anything else after that, your professional work visa, your green card processing, those are all things that, cost employers a pretty penny, but employers are willing to make that investment because they need that talent. And it's important for the government to recognize that, anything that they impose from a cost perspective, then lowers the ability for companies to continue driving innovation in their companies because the costs become too burdensome.
Very interesting. Thank you. I apologize. We have, to be transparent, so we have a couple international employees that I feel very passionate about bringing to the U.S. So I will be calling you later to help me out with that. Want to touch a little bit more on AI talent, right? Where are we finding these AI professionals? And with so many options, I mean, they could really go anywhere, right? Like a prompt engineer has so many different opportunities. How do we attract that talent? And this is a question for everybody, right? How do we attract the top of the top when they have so many different opportunities, right? It's a very competitive job market.
Going back to what we said before, still the values, the company, the leadership, right? At the end of the day, regardless of the skill set of a professional, it's a human being that wants to be happy every single day when they open that computer. So that's number one. I think that's going to be always true as long as we're working with people. And then specifically when it comes to AI projects. So there are some very interesting projects, right, working on proprietary technology. There are some that are working on open models from Gemini or OpenAI, right? So more interesting project, more complex, more advanced, more going to the future and big vision for how AI is changing the world. More interesting to a professional, especially the one that is trying to advance the skill set. And the final one, this is very interesting to me. I found this stat one time that a lot of AI engineers right now in interviews are asking specifically for infrastructure. So what is the GPUs and usage and infrastructure behind company? Because if the company doesn't have proper infrastructure, they won't be able to deploy proper model. So meaning no matter how skilled they are, no matter how much they want to deploy, there's going to be physical limitation of how much they can do. And I think that's going to be becoming one of the biggest questions in interviews right now.
Yeah.
How much can I do with AI?
Fantastic. I mean, again, you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you, right? We've got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions?